Hello, darling.
Hello,
Welcome.
how's it going?
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for joining me. I was just saying to those who are watching that we're going to talk today about the importance of having healthy boundaries to be able to manage and regulate our emotions. Like it's the foundation. And I know you've been on a journey with this, and I've been on a journey with this. And both of us started from a place of being children, as you know, sort of everybody is that we're not taught boundaries as children, and we override our boundaries. We're actually even encouraged to override our boundaries as part of a way of, you know, being acceptable and nice and people pleasing. But tell me your journey. What was your experience of how overriding your own boundaries had an impact on your emotions and your emotional health?
Sure. Yeah, I think, you bring up a really good point when you say that starting from childhood, we are sort of encouraged to not listen to what our body is telling us or what our mind is telling us about what's good for
Yeah.
us. And I think in my experience, parents want to have, control over their children. They want them to behave in a certain way. And it comes from a place of love. They want to make sure that when you grow up, you're capable and that you have the skills that you need to be successful. But in that, the process of trying to make that so also kind of squash down parts of us that are important and want to be loved. So my personal journey with developing stronger boundaries really started in my late 20s. And, I think in particular, I had a lot of anger because I felt like people weren't behaving reasonably or they weren't treating me the way that I wanted. And I didn't understand how to make that stop happening. So when I started on this personal development path, I, came to realize that I was actually not asserting my boundaries or even making them clear to others. And so that was sort of the start of a long trip to figure out what does that actually look like.
Amazing. I love how you articulate that. You explain it so well. Thank you. And yeah, I really know that place in myself where, and I think to some degree, society encourages us to think that everybody else should know how to treat us. Everybody else should almost like read our minds as to what we want and when we want it and how we want it and when we don't want it and all of the things. And I certainly feel like those were some of the messages I got growing up, you know, particularly in relationships that, you know, sort of a man will just know and, you know, he'll just treat you a certain way. But I think it leads us to just a place of disappointment, or it did with me. And as you say, we can get frustrated, we can get angry because people are not behaving the way we sort of expect them to. But actually, the whole journey of empowerment is to learn to speak our needs and to assert our boundaries. So when you started doing that, when you started realizing, oh wait, I have power here and I can make a change, but then actually gets the result I want, actually gets the outcome I want. I'm really curious, like how did things change for you? What happened for you?
Yeah, I feel like I went through a couple of stages. At first, I sort of went through this phase of just how do I even change in the moment? In the times when I do see that I have a choice to do something differently, inside it can still feel really hard to break out of the habit. And I think that just taking a breath and, reminding myself of the commitment to change is a first step in being able to do something differently. So once I sort of got a handle on that, you know, being able to identify how I can calmly communicate what I need to others, it really started to open up more dialogues with people. People were curious about the changes and also curious, like the changes in myself and the way that I was interacting, but also the changes because they were seeing that it was working for me and they were wanting to know also how can I get this for
Yeah.
myself. So I would say, yeah, just more easeful relationships and spending a lot less time feeling like I was in situations that I didn't want to be in.
Yeah, I really resonate with that. Thank you. And for me, I remember that anger was like my go-to emotion. And I would, I wanted to be like, my heart's desire was to communicate calmly and clearly and with love, and to hold compassion for the other person's experience, but that was not my lived reality. My lived reality was attempting to do that, actually almost to the point of bending myself backwards, overriding my own boundaries in terms of what was okay for me, what was comfortable. But the result was actually that it made me really frustrated and really angry. And so that came out in shadowy ways where I would try to ask for what I wanted. It didn't go the way I did. It didn't go the way, I wanted it to. And then I would just get angry and frustrated and usually shout at the other person, or maybe accuse them of something or blame them for the way I'm feeling. And it just caused a lot of hurt and pain, and for me and the other person. So it was like this lose-lose situation. So I love that you spoke about shifting that and actually creating healthier relationships, because that's been my experience too. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel, it and it does take some time, I feel, as I mentioned before, to make these shifts. But over the past, I would say 4 or 5 years, people have really commented to me on, wow, you just seem softer. It seems like things are just like you've mellowed out. I don't know what you're doing, but whatever you're doing, it's really working. And and it's not just like an external thing, like a face that I'm putting on. I really feel that when I was able to communicate what I wanted or what I didn't want, what I wasn't willing to tolerate, in a way that was, caring and, acknowledging the state the other person is in. I think that's a big part of it too, is like coming from this heart place with it rather than this you have to or it's a demand. It makes a big difference in the way, like the energy that you're putting out and the way that people experience you.
Yeah. Thank you. And yeah, I love this reflection that people are experiencing you as softer and calmer. And yeah, I sometimes get that as well. People say to me like, oh, you're more in your feminine. Like I experience you to be more feminine. And that was something that I strived for a really long time. And I used to beat myself up actually in the distant past, where I wanted to be more feminine, whatever that meant. But I didn't really know what that looked like. And what I realized was actually you sort of need to have a really good masculine in place, the boundaries, the clarity, the ability to communicate, which is all masculine sort of energy, in order for your feminine to actually come through and flourish and to feel safe. And it can be the lack of our ability to do those things that can actually make us appear more masculine. It's not that we, are masculine or have masculine traits or any of that. It's the defense mechanism. It's yeah, the way that we are defending the parts of us that don't feel protected, because we're actually not showing up for those parts.
Yeah, I super resonate with that. Having like resonate with that desire of, I want to be different. I want to make this change. And also, I want to feel safe and coming from that fear place. And I completely agree as well. When you spoke about communication, like truly expressing boundaries and enforcing boundaries is all about communication and making sure that you're on the same page with the other person who you're engaging with. And also, communication with yourself, being in touch with what you really want. And sometimes that can be the part that's hard.
Yeah, exactly. How can we know what we want when there's all this thoughts in our head about, oh, I should do this and I should be this, and this person made asked me for something, so I should deliver it, and I made a promise, and all the head stuff. So for me, I find it so important to actually get out of the head and into the body. Like when the body really only has actually, I want to say the body only has one truth, and that's not completely true, but the body has a lot less confusion. The body's much clearer about what feels okay and what doesn't feel okay. And this is why I love embodiment work. And you and I have both done an amazing training called ISTA. And in that training, we learned some emotional release tools and also loads of embodiment work. And I'm actually running a workshop this Saturday for anyone who's watching. where I'm going to be teaching a lot of those tools. And I'm curious, Maya, like, what's your experience of dropping out of the mind and coming into the body to be able to find your truth and communicate that to others?
Yeah, I feel very fortunate in that it feels very easy for me to go into my body, and it, you know, we sort of talked about at ISTA these sort of four centers of truth, right? The mind, the heart, the gut, and sort of the sex, as we call it. But I think checking in with those four centers and just saying, is this lighting me up? Do I have like a gut feeling this might be a good idea or a bad idea? Where's the connection going to come from? And what do I logically think? Because the mind is also part of this decision making process. Um, but when you go into your body, it's very easy often to be able to tell, am I feeling that jolt of excitement? Am I feeling that warmth? Am I feeling trust? Am I feeling secure? And if you're not, you can almost experience it as like your body is curling, you're backing away, you're going into this feeling of almost like a fetal position, like I'm trying to make myself more secure than I actually feel. So that's sort of the basis for how I think about it.
Yeah, I love that. I am I am someone who did identify very much with the mind, and still do. My mind is amazing and beautiful and powerful. And I'm actually someone, for those who don't know, I actually came from a background of finance and software development for like almost 20 years before stepping more into the role of coach and embodiment and empowerment. And so my mind is, it's done amazing things for me. But what I used to find when I was a software developer, and a big part of what led me to leave the corporate world, was that I would sit for hours and hours and hours at my computer, to the point where I actually forgot about my body. I forgot about my needs. I would go for hours without eating. I would suddenly realize I was desperate for the toilet, and I'd completely not realized. And then my shoulders would ache, my body would ache, everything. It just, the more I started to really connect to my body and feel my body, the more I realized how this sitting at a desk, being static, working like 9 to 5 just was not good for me personally. Some people can do it. For me, it was a no. And one of the things that really helped me connect, to feel my body more, to get out of my head, because my head was so strong, like really strong, was shamanic breath work. And probably you've experienced this in ISTA. I know a lot of the ISTA trainings have it. And in shamanic breath work, it sort of doesn't work unless you go into the body. Like if you try and stay in your head and breathe, you're just sort of laying there thinking, I'm doing the breathing, nothing's happening. Like everyone else seems to be having some sort of experience, and I'm not. And I did that on my first couple of breaths, like my first 1, 2, maybe even 3 beginning breaths. I was laying there and I could hear all these noises, other people having these experiences, and I was like, I'm doing the breath, but nothing was happening. And eventually I learned to surrender my mind, say, okay, this is the safety I need. Again, expressing the boundaries, whatever my needs are. Okay, actually, I need to be in a quieter part of the room, or I need to say that nobody is to touch me, or whatever my actual needs and boundaries are, for me to feel safe, so that I could go into the body and I could feel all of that beautiful yumminess and juiciness that's in there. Yeah, so thanks for sharing that, because that just connected me with that. I'm wondering what it brings up for you in hearing that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I had a very similar experience with breath work at first as well. I too came from the software development world, so
Oh,
my mind is
amazing.
yeah, I'm like really strongly resonating with that story. And so yeah, I did have a little bit of trouble with it at first, and I was very fortunate, I think, in after doing it a few times, feeling like once I really just sort of took it as a meditative exercise of like, I'm not supposed to be thinking about this, or there's like no way for me to do this right, and just let myself sort of like ride along on the instruction that was being given, it made it much easier to sort of drop in and feel like I was experiencing sort of what sounded similar to what was going on around me. Um, and one other thing that came up for me while you were talking
Yeah,
was when it comes to boundaries, I, you know, I really struggled at first with, well, if people aren't doing what I want them to do, like I can't do anything about that. Like I'm not in control. And it really helped me when I heard someone say, you only have boundaries on your own behavior. So
yeah,
it's on me to communicate, this is what I want or this is what I don't want. And to be to be connected to, okay, and if they don't respect that, if they aren't hearing me or they aren't following through on what I want, what am I going to do about that to take care of myself? Because you can't control what other people are going to do, but what you can do is say, oh, okay, you're not going to listen to what I've told you is going to make me feel safe. That's going to diminish my trust in you. And maybe I put some space in the relationship. Maybe I decide we can't engage in this particular way anymore. In extreme cases, I have walked away from relationships entirely where people have constantly been pushing the edge of what I have expressed as acceptable. So that was just like really strong for me as well
yeah.
there.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that because that's so true. When we go through this journey of erecting boundaries, really starting to love and value ourselves and realize that actually I'm worthy of having people in my life that can respect my boundaries and can listen to what my needs are and actually show up for those things, then it gives us the freedom to actually be more empowered to make choice around actually I can see beautiful qualities in this person, and maybe we've shared some history, maybe we were childhood friends, or we, did some trainings together, or whatever the things are, and we have a commonality. But this person is showing up in a way that makes me feel bad, makes me not feel safe, or makes me feel unheard, unseen, unimportant, whatever the things are. And actually, I don't have to engage in that because the bit you named, which is so important to take away from this live stream, is as you say, boundaries are not about you can't do this, you can't do that, you need to do this. It's about this is what feels okay for me. If you can honor that, great. I'm going to interact with you and be in the space with you. But if you can't honor that, then I'm going to remove myself from this situation. So again, the power is within around I'm going to define what my behavior is based upon what your behavior is. And if we can find a middle, brilliant. And if we can't, then yeah, we need to look at how to renegotiate these things or, maybe, as you say, leave the relationship. I love that. I love that you've left relationships because they couldn't honor your boundaries. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. And I love the language you use around that being at choice. It
Mm.
is such a, it is, I'm choosing, I put this boundary in place and now you're violating it. What am I going to choose to do next? Because it's really all about that decision. Yeah.
And this is where the emotions come in because when we don't realize that the boundary is about our behavior and we think the boundary is about somebody else's behavior, then we say, okay, I don't want you to do this thing anymore because it makes me feel X, Y, and Z. But the person continues to do the thing because that's their behavior, that's their pattern. And then you're like, oh, but I put a boundary in place. And then we feel frustrated, we feel angry, I want to throw a tantrum. And that comes out at the other person because we're trying to control them. And boundaries isn't about controlling others, although it is very misperceived. And many people believe that boundaries is about controlling others. It's about saying that, okay, I've asked you not to do this thing. You're continuing to do it. So either when you do that thing, I'm going to choose not to be around. I'm going to go into a different room, or I'm going to go out for a walk, or I'm going to X, Y, Z. Or if it's bigger, if it's actually a really big part of our dynamic, then we need to sit and talk about how we can move forward together, if we can move forward together. And if you continue, and if we can't find a way, then yeah, maybe this friendship or relationship needs to come to an end because it's not actually serving my needs and my highest good. So yeah, I love that. And this is such a key place of where we can learn to control our temper, right? Because for me, my temper used to be huge, but it was because I was expecting others to take care of my needs rather than me taking care of my needs.
Exactly, exactly. And again, I resonate with you very strongly. Used to have very big temper, and when I finally was able to get to that place of, oh, actually, it's like on me to decide when I'm ready to walk away, or it's on me to decide when, someone being unreliable, always showing up late, never putting the dishes in the dishwasher, whatever it is. Sometimes it's really tiny things, but it's on me to decide what the next step is and if I'm willing to continue to tolerate that.
Yeah, I love that. And so I work one-to-one with women who are seeking love and in relationships with their partner and wanting to make that smoother. And one of the things that people ask me is like, what happens if someone's not able to uphold a boundary or a standard that I have, but I still want to be in relationship with them? And this is a beautiful dance that we get to create. And I love what you said. It's about tolerance. It's how much space am I willing to hold for this person to be in a place of learning and growing? It's very different from just tolerating a behavior and not seeing the other person grow or change. So an example of that might be, Maya, if, I don't know, you have a particular habit I don't love, and we're in a friendship or a relationship, and I say, hey Maya, this behavior, like it's really detrimental to me. It's hurting me in these ways. Like it's making me feel this, and this. And I really care for you as a friend and I want to stay in this friendship, but this has to change. And then you might get to say something like, I really want to change this behavior, but it's so hard for me. Like I don't know how to change it, but I'm working on it. Can you be patient with me? And then I get to choose in this moment. I get to say, actually, either like, this is so painful for me. Actually, I don't think I can be patient. Maybe we need to separate and you go do your work, I go do my work, and potentially we come together again in the future. Or actually, yeah, I would love to witness your growth and support you in your growth. And I'm happy to be patient and hold space whilst I see you growing and whilst I see you in that transformation. And this is such a key thing when we're in relationship, about holding space for somebody else's growth. But that doesn't mean it has to be infinite, right? It could be a week, 2 weeks, 6 months, a year. It's, whatever we feel like. Do you have experience of this?
Yes. In fact, I'm so happy you brought this up because I feel like sometimes it's easy to get into the mindset that the boundaries that we set or the sort of conditions of those boundaries are
Yeah.
permanent. And these things can shift and change. And that includes how long, like maybe I'm willing to tolerate this now, but how long am I willing to tolerate it for? Or some life circumstance shifts. And maybe I was able to hold space for somebody's growth in the past, but now I'm having fewer emotional resources and I actually need to take a step back. In fact, one of my partners and I separated for a little over a year so that we could take some time to work on both sides, work on our personal growth. And then, we came back together and, our relationship is probably stronger than it ever had been before our breakup. So, even if you do make those decisions to, either hold space for the other person or take some space for yourself so that you can have a little bit of distance, that doesn't mean that it needs to be like that forever. You can always re-engage or disengage in the moments when it is feeling like that needs to happen.
Yeah, I love that. You bring up the piece that boundaries are not fixed. If they're fixed, they're actually walls or blocks. There's a difference between a block, which is fixed, and it's a way that we try to protect ourselves when we can't navigate the subtleties underneath, or a boundary which actually is flexible and movable, and it changes depending on like the needs of the situation. So there may be, I'm very sound sensitive, and I also love music and being with people. So for me, if I'm concentrating, if I'm writing an email or coaching my clients or something like that, I need quiet, I need silence. And so I would ask my partner, hey babe, could you turn the music down? Or, whatever's on your phone, can you mute it, just so that I can be in that zone? But there might be other times when actually I'd love the music to be on, I'd love it to be super loud, and we can be dancing and I can be with people. So I have a boundary around sound, but it changes depending on the circumstance. So I love that you brought that in as well. And amazing, I love that you and your partner took space to heal and to do your work separately, and then you came back and now you're even stronger. That's just really, really beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. It definitely requires, you know, a sense of trust, trust in self and trust in other, or even just, you know, trust that the path knows the way, even if you don't know how things are going to turn out. But yeah, it's challenging.
Yeah, and that trust, I believe, comes when we are connected to our body. I believe it's very difficult to have a high level of trust when we're just operating from the mind, because the mind will come up with all of the reasons and excuses, and often they're conflicting and we get torn between which one. But actually the body has actually been my way of healing trust. I came from having a lot of trust issues in the past, feeling very mistrusting of people's intentions, mistrusting of people's character, mistrusting of the way people would treat me. And that projected in me always jumping to conclusions, being highly critical, always assuming the worst case scenario when things happened. And actually often it wasn't the worst case scenario, but I'd created all of this anxiety in my head because I jumped to those conclusions. And when I really started to learn to connect with my body, I I was taught through amazing teachers that actually the vibration in our body is the truest indicator of safety or trust. And I started to get to the point, in fact, now I even get to the point where if I'm walking down a street at night and it's dark and my mind is starting to say, hey, Natalie, was this a good decision? You know, it's like, it's dark, there's nobody around, it's late. And the mind is like, I'm not sure this is safe. I come into my body and I'm like, oh, okay, what is my body saying? And what I have learned time and time again is that my body is accurate. My mind will be full of all the stories, but my body, if it's calm, if there's a sense of ease, a sense of relaxation, I'm safe, and I can trust. And that applies to people and situations. But if my body is also anxious, if my body is like, actually not so sure about this, then it's time for me to find the quickest route home and get back to safety. So yeah, yeah, do you have something similar? I'm curious, or what does that bring up for you?
Definitely. I experience that very strongly in interactions with other people as well. And it can be, you know, and it can change on a dime, you know. Sometimes be having an interaction, be feeling really good. The other person says or does something that on the surface can logically appear totally benign, but the body will have a reaction. And that's an indication to me that I need to slow down, figure out what's going on. Or conversely, perhaps I, you know, in new situations, maybe feeling very tense. Um, and then something happens, somebody says something that helps to build that sense of trust and safety, and you can feel yourself relax into it. And I think it's really important to stay well attuned to what's going on in your body for these reasons, because it can shift so quickly in either direction, any direction. You know, it's not just a like one dimensional scale. There are like many different things that your body can tell you at any point in time.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. One of the ways that I teach the women that I coach around dating, in terms of how do I know if this man is a good match for me, or how do I know if this is, if I can trust him? And it comes into this place of asking the body, not the mind. And yeah, this felt sense of, if we feel that actually the body is becoming uneasy, oh, I feel tight, I feel my shoulders have gone up, or I'm clenching my hands, or my jaw feels a bit tighter. Okay, great. Pause. What needs to change? Like, is there a need I need to express? Is there a boundary I need to express? Do I need to ask for something, or do I just need space to work out what those things are? So I love that you mentioned that, and that you can feel that really viscerally in your body when you're with somebody.
Yeah, and you know, I think this, I love that you recommend this to people, because I will sometimes just do, you know, when I'm alone and I am trying to ask myself questions about other people, what's my like half second read on them? It's just like when I think about my partner, like what does that feel like? And just for a moment, like let that flash. And it's like, oh, like what I feel is like we're like snuggled up on the couch and, it's like soft and warm and it's cozy. And then I think about, okay, what's my like 1 second read on, I don't know, for maybe somebody who harmed me when I was in high school, and I was just like, oh, like, you
Mm,
know, that tightness that you mentioned. And it only takes a second. If you really linger on it, your mind will start to kind of come in and give you reasons or try to justify or say, oh, am I being too hard on that person? Or just let
yes.
it be a quick moment in time. What's your like overall impression? And that can tell you a lot.
Yeah. And oh, something just came. Oh, food. Yeah, food. This when I was like, what was the piece I was tracking there? Um, this 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 felt sense that you speak of I I notice in my body when I want to make a decision and it's a yes or no decision. If the answer in my body is yes, there's a sense of relaxation, like opening, a little bit like expansion, ease. And if the answer is no, there's a sense of tightening and clenching. And when I wanted to become more embodied and more soul led, body led around food, I used to put food in front of me, or if I didn't have it directly in front of me, like conjure up an image in my head and think, do I want this? And I can actually feel it in my body. Like the body's either like, oh, yes, that feels delicious, like I'm expanding, or oh, no, no, we don't want that one today. And I would literally put bits of food like in front of me and tune into like, do I expand feeling this food or do I contract? And that was my way of choosing how to become more authentic with like eating just food, like what food feels good for me. But yeah, we can use this yes no decision on everything. Should I go on a date with this person, or should I phone them, and all the things. Yeah, so I love that. um yeah, it actually, one more piece on that is it's also a big part of how I healed anxious attachment. So I'm someone who used to attach really anxiously in relationships, and whenever someone wouldn't stay in contact, I would freak out and make up all these stories in my head. Oh my God, they've left, they found somebody else. Oh, I've upset them, whatever the thing is. And when I started asking my body, what is the truth here? Coming into the body and actually tuning into the image of that person, feeling our connection, and just asking, like, is everything okay? And the body would tell me, like, yeah, like, actually, we're fine. He's chilling out, doing his thing. Don't worry about him. Or I would get an anxious signal and it'd be like, actually, something's not good. Like, you need to reach out to him. You need to have a conversation, whatever the things are. But it was a massive part of me learning to become more securely attached. And I'm curious if that's anything that you've journeyed with.
It's funny because I actually typically have been an avoidant attacher.
Okay, we're the opposite. Great.
Yeah, but I also feel like this has been helpful for me because I feel like, my pattern kind of was like the person does something. So I don't state my boundary. Person does something I don't like. I get mad at them. We have a conflict, and I'm like, whatever, just like give me space. I am annoyed with you. Um, and it was sort of coming from, interestingly, sort of coming from this place of like, I really care about this person. I don't want to hurt them with my anger, and just wanting to sort of like hide that from them so that it wouldn't be impacting them as much. But it was like creating, distance between me and them intentionally to avoid that hurt. And I think when I was able to, you know, express what I needed while trying to still stay connected with the person, that it was like, okay, they know what I want, what I need. I've like done my part to sort of communicate that to them. And if they do violate that, then, the anger can still come up, but at least then it's a different conversation. It's not me being like, you're so inconsiderate, you're like doing these things that are like harmful to me, or you aren't thinking about how this is impacting me and I want you to go away. Now it's this conversation of, hey, like we discussed this and like we had this agreement that you were going to behave in this way. What's going on? And so it drives it closer towards secure connection rather than this like shoving away.
Yeah. I love that. And interesting enough, even though my history is anxious attachment, I seem to attract a lot of clients with avoidant attachment as well. So I've got really good at supporting this. And one of the things I find that is common with people who tend to be more avoidant in their attachment style is the belief that if I express my needs, they're not going to be met. So there's no point even trying. So there's often this edge of, can you lean into, and can you actually ask for what your needs are and give the other person an opportunity to try and meet you in that. And when I say needs, it may also be a boundary expression, because that can be a need as well. So I love that it's also helping you to lean towards secure attachment, lean into those conversations, and get curious about what's the other person's experience. Why are they showing up this way? That's a massive part of the secure attachment. So I love that.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So I feel like maybe we're naturally coming to an end here, which is great. So we're on about the half an hour mark, perfect timing. So I just want to say to those who are watching, if you are wanting to connect more with your body and learn better boundaries and self-expression, then I'm running a workshop this Saturday called Body and Soul Expansion, which I would love you to come to. It's in the UK, in London. And we're going to do a whole day of coming into the body, and learning to be truly authentic through emotional release and shamanic breathwork. And Maya, do you work with clients? Tell me if you have offerings or what's going on for you. I'd love for you, and I'm sure people listening would love to hear about it too.
Sure. I do work with clients in one-on-one settings. I'm a personal development coach, and you could check out my offerings at www.intensepresencecoaching.com. I'll also link that in the comments below. Or you can connect with me on LinkedIn if you just want to, stay in touch with all the different coaching and mentorship stuff that I have going on. I'm happy to connect with you.
Brilliant. And how will they find you on LinkedIn? What name is it just Maya Lila or?
Yep, Maya Lila. If you search that on LinkedIn, I think that I should come up.
Brilliant. Okay, awesome. And I'm on Facebook, but actually Instagram is more where I reside these days. So you can DM me through Facebook to find my other handles, or message me about Body and Soul Expansion. I will also put a link below this live stream. So Maya, it has been such a delight chatting with you. I
Yeah,
love that we
thank you.
have such similar stories, but actually there's differences as well. You come from the avoidant attachment, I'm coming more from the anxious attachment, but we're both moving towards this place of like secure attachment and being able to express our needs and boundaries and feel really embodied in that place. So a beautiful conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. It's been a joy speaking with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Loved it. Hope we can chat again in the future sometime.
Would
All
love
the best.
that.
Lots of love to everyone watching. And if anyone's got questions, just put them in the comments. I will post this in just a moment, and Maya and I will happily respond to you on there.
Okay.
Bye.